China is using DEI to attack America, but this isn't just hypocritical propaganda. This is narrative warfare. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. The Chinese Communist Party is weaponizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, to undermine the US and thrust itself into a position of global dominance. Fitting, since the CCP and the movement behind DEI share a Marxist-Leninist framework. China is using DEI to attack America and portray it as an inherently and egregiously racist country.
I have concern that Asian Americans are getting stereotyped, are getting targeted for reasons that have to do with more misinformation than real information.
For many Americans, access to good public transportation is essential to a good life.
But far too often, minorities, especially African Americans, don't have access to reliable and efficient public transportation.
In reality, not a lot of people like to hear this, but slavery was never over. It just evolved into an acceptable form.
Slavery was never over? Aw, man, does this mean I have to start going to work on Juneteenth again? I wish I lived in China instead. Because they would never be cool with the forced labor of Africans. Chinese state-run media would have you believe that the US is such a racist place that its suppression of China is bound to have an element of racial discrimination and prejudice, and that it embeds racism deeply into its competition with major powers. So when America tells China, hey, stop ethnically cleansing minorities, they're being racist. But this is narrative warfare. Reframe legitimate concerns about the Chinese Communist Party as racism.
So next time when politicians in Washington go about lecturing others, be it Arabs, Balkans, Latins, or Chinese, on the importance of ethnic and racial harmony, they could perhaps also listen to the emotional call from then 25-year-old Romney King.
Can we all get along? Can we get along?
Yes, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we just let China build artificial islands in the South China Sea and militarize them? Keep in mind, this is coming from a country that's running concentration camps and committing genocide against minorities. And speaking of genocide, gosh, what a fun transition. Recognize this party shill? That's Wang Guan. You may remember him from such timeless features as What's China's Re-Education Camp in Xinjiang Really About? A totally factual and absolutely unbiased look at the treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. But this isn't just hypocritical propaganda. Don't stop there. Dig deeper. This DEI propaganda isn't just about attacking the US. The Communist Party is also presenting itself as the champion of inclusivity. That's the secret to China's success. And the Communist Party will drag out all the happy, dancing ethnic minorities to prove to the world how inclusive it is. And this is actually very smart of the Chinese Communist Party. After decades of failed Maoist policies, the Chinese Communist Party knew they desperately needed foreign investment to jumpstart China's economy. And they got it by taking advantage of the West's desire for a better world. In 2003, a guy working for the UN named James Gifford created ESG, that stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. It was designed to be another useful metric to help investors assess the health and future profitability of a company. The idea is that a company that doesn't prioritize ESG will perform poorly long term. Invest in coal? Won't do much good when governments start to ban it. Don't have enough diversity? You won't attract the best talent. Since these are, as it's described, metrics that can be measured, a company gets an ESG score, and the higher it is, the more investment you can get. And so, China was the place for all these corporations to invest. It was a communist country headed to democracy. As long as the West gives China plenty of capital, they will reform. This movement to invest in China was spearheaded way back in 1979 by head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, when he invited then Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping to Davos. Although he declined, Klaus then traveled to China later that year. Keep in mind, Klaus Schwab's WEF has said by 2030 we'll own nothing and be happy. So I definitely see him as a fellow traveler. there was definitely ideological motivation to make China a superpower. And with all that investment from Western companies, China became a major power. That's why today you have so-called experts saying China plays an exemplary role in promoting fair, inclusive, global human rights governance. China heralds itself as a promoter of inclusivity in global development, an inclusive digital economy, inclusivity for women, and more. The idea is that China, as an alternative to the racist US-led world order, will lead the global South. And Chinese state media loves to talk about how committed China is to building a global South community with a shared future. And it will be fair, inclusive, and non-discriminatory. Of course, there's been a lot of pushback to investing in China now. That could cripple China's rise to power. But, as Yale economist Stephen Roach says, any attempt to stop US investment in China is just xenophobia. Is this starting to make sense to you? Because at the end of the day, China says in a multipolar world, democracy is diverse. And as we all know, China's whole process, people's democracy, is the best democracy. So there, I just laid out the plan to make the Chinese Communist Party a global superpower using DEI, a plan that had many willing participants in the West. Episodes like this are why the Chinese Communist Party hates China Uncensored. Chinese state media even called China Uncensored disgraceful anti-China garbage, which I put on a t-shirt that you can buy at chinauncensored.tv/merchandise, and it's not made in China. The problem is, I don't get DEI or ESG investment. So to keep making China Uncensored, I rely on support from viewers like you. Paying my staff and keeping the lights on isn't cheap, and the CCP would love it if I had to shut the show down. That's why I need your help. All it takes is $1 or more an episode on patreon.com/China Uncensored. I make about 16 episodes a month, but if that's too much for you, you can set a monthly limit. So you can ensure I can keep uncensoring China for even $1 a month. And as a thank you to everyone who gives on Patreon, I'll answer one of your questions at the end of these episodes. Today's question comes from Inside. Here's a question. Which of China's actual neighbors don't hate China? North Korea is not an option since it's China's puppet/vassal state. Oh, well, I could do a whole episode about all the reasons China and North Korea actually hate each other inside. Turns out communists don't really get along. But this is an excellent question for today's episode. China can't be a global leader because they're a nasty authoritarian state that everyone hates. China has pissed off all its direct neighbors by claiming the entire South China Sea and aggressively attacking all neighboring countries' assets in the region and inside. Even beyond its local neighbors, China is angering just about everyone. Its Belt and Road global infrastructure project that was supposed to be the linchpin of its global ambitions is literally falling apart if projects just haven't been abandoned entirely. But you know what hasn't been abandoned? The more than $1 trillion of debt owed to China for these projects. There is no way for China to lead a new world order because it's a mess. Hopefully, all the Americans who supported and continue to support the CCP's rise finally realize it. Thanks for your question and your support, Inside. And here's a video I want to show you. It's about why you shouldn't, as Marx said, overthrow all pre-existing social conditions because that's insane. A criticism YouTube might not want to hear because it might affect their ESG score. So I'm hiding it in gaming content on my new show, Deep Thoughts While Gaming. Click here and let me know what you think. And click that orange button to support us on Patreon. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.